everyone, Nicole Russo and Dan Illman here for the Oaks Countdown on DRFTV, and we're about to enter that final countdown toward the May 3rd Kentucky Oaks. Things going to kick into high gear with the final major prep races beginning this weekend. Here's a look at that series of upcoming prep races that offer 100 points to the winner. Dan, it's winning you're
It's
in.
basically winning you're in right now. And I guess you could argue maybe if you run second, you're in as well. 50 points, not too shabby. You're right. Things are really going to start heating up with the Fairgrounds Oaks and the Bourbonette Oaks this week. And then graded stakes action at Gulfstream and Oaklawn. It's just going to be a smorgasbord leading up to the Kentucky Oaks. We're going to learn a lot more in the next few weeks.
And as a reminder, here is a look at the current point standings as we come into this final stretch. And that's a good point about if you already have some points and you run second or even third, depending on your position, you could set yourself up nicely for the Oaks. I think a second or third place finish in one of these final preps might be the scenario, for a filly like just FYI, where she's coming off the layoff and needs to kind of move herself ahead if she's going to make the Kentucky Oaks. But we'll see a lot of these fillies in action this weekend in the Fairgrounds Oaks, a couple in the Bourbonette Oaks, which we'll also discuss in a moment. But really the focus is on the Fairgrounds, which is the path last year's Oaks winner Pretty Mischievous took, winning the Untappable and Rachel Alexandra before finishing second in the Fairgrounds Oaks for Godolphin and Brendan Walsh. And she's a great example of, you're looking for a filly to kind of prep and then be in a position to move ahead in the Kentucky Oaks.
You're absolutely right. And the Fairgrounds path to the Kentucky Oaks has been so fruitful over the years. You mentioned Pretty Mischievous, and I think it's going to be no different in 2024. We have some very talented fillies lining up. This race is led by Tarifa, the number 5, and Intricate, the number 6, the 1-2 finishers in the recent Grade 2 Rachel Alexandra at the Fairgrounds. But I think a key horse to consider in this race is a horse that is on our points list, and that is the number 1 VV's Dream, a horse that won the Pocahontas last year, was second in the Alcibiades, and has been a bit disappointing in her last 2 races. But if we could just brush those races off and say, well, they were contested on sloppy tracks, maybe the real VV's Dream shows up. It's a very important race for this Kenny McPeek trainee on Saturday.
And if VV's Dream starts moving ahead again and shows some of that old form, she is already a graded stakes winner around 2 turns at Churchill Downs last fall for Kenny McPeek. That's also the case with Intricate, who won a graded stake in November at Churchill Downs for Brendan Walsh, second in the Rachel Alexandra and her 3-year-old debut to Tarifa. Tarifa won the Rachel Alexandra in her stakes debut. So I think both of these fillies still have a lot of upside as well.
I agree with you 100%, especially in the case of Intricate, who ran in the Rachel Alexandra off the layoff, as did Tarifa, caught a sloppy track. But Brendan Walsh just seems to have the magic touch recently with these 3-year-old fillies at the Fairgrounds, and I would expect Intricate to take a step forward. An interesting contender making her stakes debut is the number 7, Our Pretty Woman, Joel Rosario, Steve Asmussen. This is an unbeaten daughter of Medaglia d'Oro, who might be the greatest sire of fillies we've ever seen.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. These 3-year-old races, of course, you have different horses every year, but some of the connections, some of the background the same, which gives you interesting storylines. Medaglia d'Oro, the sire of a couple of Oaks winners, including Rachel Alexandra, who came through this Oaks path at the Fairgrounds. Steve Asmussen has trained a couple of Oaks winners. And with the 2 favorites there, Tarifa and Intricate, Tarifa is a Godolphin homebred trained by Brad Cox. Intricate's trained by Brendan Walsh for different connections. And, they teamed up last year with Pretty Mischievous. So all of that kind of background, really interesting to look at storyline wise.
No, absolutely. It seems like you've got the best of the best at the Fairgrounds route to the Triple Crown and to the Kentucky Oaks as well, with connections, with pedigrees. This is a really intriguing race. I really think we're going to get 1 or 2 major contenders for the Kentucky Oaks coming out of this race on Saturday.
Absolutely. But, as we said, not to be forgotten, the Bourbonette Oaks at Turfway, points on the scale starting with 50 to the winner and going down. So you could also win here and get in. Now, while the brother race, the Jeff Ruby, has made a real impact on the Kentucky Derby in recent years, the Bourbonette on the Tapeta has been a less productive prep toward the Oaks in recent years. But a few familiar names in this year's field who have some form on dirt. Alpine Princess, who's expected to run here instead of at Fairgrounds for Brad Cox, actually won the Untappable and was fourth in the Rachel Alexandra. And Band of Gold won the Martha Washington at Oaklawn. So some fillies who have dirt form, if they come back to dirt after.
These two fillies are the keys to the race, aren't they, Nicole? Because you're right. If they can transfer their very successful dirt form to synthetic, they're going to run well in the Bourbonette Oaks and earn a spot in the starting gate for the Kentucky Oaks on dirt where we know they can contend. Even Saratoga Secret for Mr. Lucas has very good dirt form, second in the Schuylerville, yes, last year sprinting before perhaps going a bit off form. Maybe she'll improve, switching to synthetic. Being by Arrogate, whose progeny seemed to do well on turf and on synthetic. It's really a fun race. I'm curious as to your thoughts even on Winnable, the number 2 by Triple Crown winner Justify. Kenny McPeak doesn't always win first time out, so I think it's a very good sign that this filly won off the screen in her debut.
Yeah, and Justify really a multi-purpose sire. We've seen his runners worldwide, greater Group 1 winners on dirt, on turf. So this is another one that really could transfer her form well to dirt. And as we said, the Tapeta at Turfway transferring well to the dirt at Churchill Downs for the boys. We've seen Rich Strike, we've seen 2 fills in recent years. The fillies haven't quite found that magic formula, but certainly the potential is there.
A very exciting runner in this race is the 8 Pink Polka Dots, a filly that's only raced twice on turf for trainer Joe Sharp. But not only has she not been headed, they haven't gotten anywhere near her. She's been at least 2 lengths ahead of her competition at every point of either one of her races. And we have seen turf horses transfer that form successfully to the synthetic surfaces in the past. A nice daughter of Candy Ride is Pink Polka Dots, who gets a class test, and we'll see what happens if they throw some speed at her.
Candy Ride, another multi-purpose sire, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see Pink Polka Dots and perhaps Maxi Superfly up on the front end in the Bourbonette Oaks. Maxi Superfly just caught a flyer and was dominant in the local prep for this, the Cincinnati Trophy. So she's got the local form, and I think the two of them could be right up there on the front
And
end
not
together.
to be outdone, the number 9, You Know Nothing. I realize her Buyer's speed figures are a little light compared to some of the others, but she is trained by Christophe Clement, who's very strong on the Kentucky Derby trail right now with Gotham winner Deterministic. He'll have Panda Gate in the starting gate for the UAE Derby in a couple of weeks. You Know Nothing is a very intriguing entrant in this race. She was beaten last time out at odds on in an allowance race at Tampa Bay, and yet Clement is showing the confidence to run her in this Kentucky Oaks points race.
Yeah, and I mean, as you can tell by the number of contenders we keep unearthing here, just some wide open, really, races this weekend on the road to the Kentucky Oaks. They're both essentially win and you're in, as we said. And we'll recap all of the action for you here next week and look ahead to the major preps on March 30th. We're really getting into the thick of things now in the Oaks Countdown. We'll be back next week to bring you all of the latest news and updates on the road to the Philly Classic.